Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 Episode 17. One of the most visually insane things I have ever seen. This episode had one of the most stacked staff lists ever. Look at this. If you are familiar with the world of animation, you'd know that most of these names are capable of carrying an entire production by themselves. They threw everything they had at this episode. They got every single person they could. This episode was not supposed to exist, but it does. This was one of the most glorious displays of animation muscle. This was one of the most interesting looking episodes ever. Let's talk about the visuals. Make sure to subscribe. Now, this episode, directed and storyboarded by Itsuki Tsuchigami, Hakyu Go, and Harumi Yamazaki, was far from perfect. I know some of you get mad when I point out flaws, but it's an animation breakdown. That's the whole idea. Chunks of this episode looked unfinished. Some parts were borderline broken, but the insanely ambitious storyboards and the animation helped hide a lot of it. The entire episode had a 2.35 to 1 CinemaScope aspect ratio, which was an interesting choice. Also, the episode had this dark, desaturated look, which was contrasted well by the fire-filled finale. The unfinished nature of this episode is quite visible near the start. Unlike the action scenes, these don't feature the characters flying all over the place or constant background animation. This makes the jank more noticeable. The movement looks off. The drawings are inconsistent. The weird non-animated zoom on Gojo.jpg was particularly unbearable. It's a single frame, so the lines naturally look smudged. I liked the close-ups. The thick, stylized lines looked great, but this rotation was completely broken. The drawings were not consistent whatsoever. I'm not trying to belittle the animators and their efforts, but these issues do exist, despite the outrageously stacked staff list. That's how fundamentally broken this production is. That's how bad the schedule is. The effects here look quite interesting. There's a ton of moving elements on screen. This is straight out of a Mob Psycho opening. The pole here is actually rotating, which is impressive. Not a fan of how static this cut is. They hold on to this one not particularly well drawn frame for way too long. The shadows are completely unmoving as well. Such a rough looking cut. If you think I'm nitpicking, just observe his nose and the outlines around the far side of his face. I'm going to give the staff the benefit of the doubt and say that the mouth suddenly appearing was a stylistic choice and not an in-betweening error. I do appreciate the effects animation and the fact that they made this complicated design move. There is a massive amount of lines on it. The drawings on Fushiguro, however, look extremely rough. Although Megumi Uchiha looks great. Out of all the characters, Mahoraga is the hardest to draw, and naturally it suffered the most. The Mahoraga drawings were all over the place throughout this episode. I'll get into more specific examples in a second. The character acting here was solid, especially this cut. The movement looked nice. This episode was visibly cutting corners near the start. For example, they held on to this one drawing for so long. Again, the episode had to rely on tricks like these, despite the massive amount of talent involved. This production is cursed. And with that, the fight begins. And that's it. I will stop being so negative. I won't point out a flaw unless it's something that really stood out to me. Contrary to popular belief, I like being optimistic, and I have to respect the sheer volume of ambition that went into this fight. Loved the way the ground was animated. It wasn't really animated. The road is a part of the background illustration, and the animator drew these lines and chunks of concrete directly on top of it. Also, the camera work is quite well done. It makes the relatively static scenes feel energetic. The Mahoraga drawings here don't look good. What's happening with its head and face? Also, the abdominal muscles and lines completely disappear here. Honehone's section was amazing. The amount of background animation was mind-blowing. The entire house here is hand animated, and so is the broken glass. This background isn't really animated. It's a flat color with shifting lines, but the debris is. Lovely smoke animation here. It lasts for a second, but still. Also love the blacked out sections on Sukuna's face and outfit. It makes him look so cool. Such an insane cut. The entire background is hand animated, so the animator drew the entire thing, including these tables and chairs which get blasted, as well as the interior of the house, which includes the pipes overhead. Every single one of these elements was hand animated. This cut is around 2 seconds long, but so much happens in it. Background animation is one of the most time-consuming things ever, but they did it anyway. You have the classic exchange of strikes with heavily smeared hands. Also love the fact that Sukuna blocks the fists with an open hand but stops the blade using his fingers. Nice attention to detail. Although what is happening with Mahoraga here? Is that his mouth? This building is a part of the background but switches to hand-drawn animation as it breaks apart. Also amazing storyboard work. The building is collapsing and they visualize that by having the background shift. The drawings here look really rough. I know I said I won't be negative, but come on. Look how badly the lines shift and how stiff the motion is. These are some of the most unfinished looking drawings from this episode. They don't look good. I know Mahoraga's design is complicated, but I'm here to talk about the visuals, both the good and bad. Really love the way they drew Sukuna here. They blacked out the areas around his eye and mouth, which made him look more intimidating. Also, every single car here is hand animated, which is unreal. They could have easily made them 3D, but they didn't. Also, it lasts for a couple of frames, but you can see the cross-section of the car engine and the car interior. Insane work. The transition between the background illustration and the hand-animated buildings was really well done. Also, look at the sheer volume of background animation. Every single building is hand-animated. Also, the camera itself changes perspective. It goes from an angular shot to a straight one, which only makes things more complicated. The compositing team added this grainy filter on top of the background, which looks inoffensive. The characters are shown using this Yutaka Nakamura inspired meteor-like shape. They used a stock super background for a second, which was interesting. Even the interior of the building is hand animated. Also insane storyboard work, with the tables and the people sliding by. The storyboard work continues to be amazing. We get this low angle shot which seamlessly switches to a Dutch angle shot. The ground here is hand animated, and look at the amount of individual lines and shapes present in it. The ground being hand drawn made the camera movement feel heavy. Also, some nice lineless smears here. Mahoraga is effectively a colored blob which gets the speed across. Another janky cut. I appreciate the amount of movement, but the drawings look rough. Also, the cut completely freezes near the end. Really solid animated zoom here. Love the perspective. Also, this cut is straight out of Mob Psycho. Amazing storyboards. This sequence is very dynamic, with the characters moving a lot, both in general and relative to the camera. The cranes are completely hand-drawn. Background animation was probably high up on the priority list. Although the collapsing crane.png looked awkward. Another not so flattering depiction of Mahoraga, although the storyboards were nice. Loved the first person shot. I hope the choppiness was intentional. Also, amazing shot composition. The Dutch angle coupled with Mahoraga's body language looked great. I have a love-hate relationship with this cut. They hand-drew these people and the cars, which is super impressive, but the noticeably flat background sliding across the screen looked awful. A complete lack of depth here. Same goes for this building. More background animation. It's genuinely surprising. I know this season has a lot of it, but for an episode as last minute as this one, the amount of background animation is out of this world. The most impressive thing about these cuts is the amount of moving elements on screen. It feels like a climactic fight because so much is happening. Another first-person shot followed by a dynamic cut. Sukuna is tiny here, but 6 frames later, the shot turns into an extreme close-up. I don't like critiquing background animation, but this is obviously unfinished. The window grows in size here. Unless I'm missing something, I don't think it's supposed to do that. Also, a beam simply appears at one point. Amazing storyboards, but the execution is a tad bit weak. It's not a big deal. An insanely fluid cut animated by Verkreek here. Not sure how well the background goes with it, but amazing regardless. Also, the background seamlessly transitions from an illustration animation to 2D animation. Love the low angle shot here, complicated for no reason. Unlike some of the unfinished cuts, these drawings are warped on purpose, and you can tell the difference. The loose style of animation looks amazing. Look how heavily distorted the drawings are. Sukuna's body literally breaks at several points. Also, insane perspective work on the hand. The drawings are so loose and energetic. I love it. There's a difference between a warped drawing and a broken one. Some of these cuts are animated by Vincent Chansard. Yes, they got him too. And the first thing he did after the episode finished airing was tell the world that he wouldn't work with MAPPA again. And can you blame him? Everything on screen is hand animated here. The background, the building, and the character. This episode is slowly desensitizing me to background animation. Insanely cool concept here. Sukuna showing up on the big screen looked so awesome. Again, tons of moving elements. Lots and lots of debris and effects. It's genuinely astounding. The fact that the team could pull this off despite the tight deadlines is commendable. Also lovely effects, most likely animated by Hayato Kurosaki. Vincent's ability to make the background move is terrifying, although it's a shame that a part of his work got ghosted beyond recognition. Not only did he hand animate the background, he made the camera rotate, and the camera kept rotating. How does he do it? Also loved the watercolor-like aesthetic here. Some lovely abstract warped smears can be seen. I think these are supposed to be trees. If I had $1 for every time I used the term background animation in this video, I'd be rich. They animated entire buildings like it's nothing. I guess that's what happens when you have some of the best animators in the world working on one single episode. Also, the hand animation is so smooth. The ghosting is a shame though. Some of these cuts do look quite rough. I hope at least a part of it is on purpose. I appreciate the 2D background elements here, but their motion looks quite janky. Amazing hand animation, animated by Curie Lu, because of course. It's more visible in the original layout. This final cut though, it looks really rough. That's not a good drawing. If, by any chance, it's a stylistic choice, it's not a good one. Loved Hironori Tanaka's cut. He is really good at drawing sinister looking characters. It's a shortcut, but it looks insane. Also, we have that classic, easily recognizable Tanaka line work. The scale increases yet again, so does the amount of moving elements. Saucelot animated one of the most insane looking cuts from this episode. The entire thing is animated on once, aka has a frame rate of 24, and there's an ungodly amount of moving elements. Just look at the amount of colors in the layout. Each of these colors is a different type of effect. How do you go about animating something like that? The effects alone would be complicated enough, but he animated Mahoraga walking, all while his body was forming. A lot of this cut is outlineless, reminds me of Tamlu's work. Also, Vincent returned and animated 6 different kinds of effects, and some of the most beautiful hair animation out there. Also, we had some of that classic Takumi Sunakohara effects. I know I'm repeating myself, but look at the amount of moving elements on screen. So much is happening, it's genuinely unbelievable. Loved the effects here. The fire looks completely different compared to the previous episode, but it looks stunning regardless. Also, was the lowered frame rate a stylistic choice, or did the in-between department give up? It looks awkward. 3 completely different styles of fire, one after the other. The stylized kind, the realistic, almost Koyoshinari-like fire, and the more simplified kind. Artistic freedom, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, the fight came to an end. This was insane. Of course, it had its rough edges, but it was one of the most ambitious things I have ever seen. Incredible work. The fact that this could have looked even better does piss me off, but this was phenomenal. I don't know what the team will do from this point on. The production is clearly in shambles, and you can't assemble a team like this every time. I am worried. That's about it. Did you like this video? Check out this other bit of content on screen if you did. Make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time.